What's good? Welcome back to Agitator, the modern day Scarface story disguised as a mystic juggalo weeb podcast. We're up in the cut with Adam Lehrer, author, rockstar, juicehead,
Indeed.
maniac.
Yep. Yep.
What's good?
My muscles are fuller, my body fat is lower, but my dick is fat as it ever was.
I've seen it plenty of times with in that video.
That's not a fair representation of my cock. Those shorts were cutting off my circulation. My wife actually told me, she's like, it looks a little shrimpy compared to usual. I'm like, fuck. They took that shot without me realizing, and I was just like adjusting myself on stage.
Well, the editor
But yeah,
really
that was
likes
fun.
that shot because it kept going back to it.
Well, the editor, no, actually, it was the director. The only one who made any money was we hired a really professional director of photography, and he's like, liberal Columbia kid. And at first, I could tell he was pretty shocked by like the whole vibe of it, my lyrics, me and Bienstock's dynamic, me and Bradford's dynamic, the director, and one of my best friends. But it was funny. He slowly just started being like seduced, and by the end, I could tell he was really like happy and felt like, oh, I've seen something that I'm not supposed to be seeing or whatever, like a De Palma film or something.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, it was fun.
No, it was fucking it's ridiculous. It goes in places I didn't expect it to. It's
Yeah, well,
like
me too.
pure.
Because like
Go ahead.
oh no, because we diverted from the script like so much. By the end, I was like, wait, what is the actual narrative? But but then we chopped it up in the editing room, and it kind of makes sense. It's like cops bum rush our fans, and then Bienstock and I execute the cops and steal their uniforms, and then we pretend we're cops, and then we see a hippie homo played by our homo friend Kevin dealing drugs, and then Bienstock and I, we were like, get him, get the AIDS demon, and then we chase him down. But then at the end, like, we're so moved by his patriotism with the American flag that we all just sort of have like a cathartic moment together and cry it out in front of the beach. Pretty fucking, I mean, I gotta say, I think it's the best art of 2023. It's playing at a gallery right now in Australia, which is the mind-blowing thing. I'm like, how retarded are Aussies that they think this is worthy of a gallery exhibition? It's like,
oh, dude, yeah, that is a very fair question. I think we would pose that to listeners. How retarded are Australian people? I would say very.
yeah. It's pretty funny though, because like, I put so much work in to writing books and like keeping things. The Botched Chadification album was just like, took us we did 4 songs over 4 weeks. Bienstock and I would just link up on a Saturday. He'd have the music ready. I'd howl gay poetry about male failure and plastic surgery and anabolics over his like bro metal riffs. And then we'd just like get coffee or go like record shopping or something. And of course, this is like probably the most popular thing that I've ever done so far. We already have like thousands of fucking views. It was brought up in there's this art world listserv, Invisible Dole. It's like they're like the libtard cops of the art world, have been for a long time. They were like discussing my use of the term Negro genetics evade me, like, is it justified or not? And I'm like, hey bro, it's a compliment to Black people that they're able to get so yoked. And B, it's just like a quote from Rich Piana that I thought was hysterical. Negro genetics evade. But yeah, I'm pleased. Dude, with how the whole thing came out.
My dad is 68. He's a black dude. My stepdad, he's a 68, and he's jacked as fuck still. And he doesn't do shit. It's just good genetics.
Yeah, like, they have good genetics for muscle fat ratio.
Yeah. It's really he's got a probably a 28 waist and, you know, just well
Wow,
proportioned.
that's
and,
tiny. That's
Yeah.
tiny. That's
Yeah,
sick.
it's
So
like
he's got like a
he's
V
got-
taper.
He's got the V taper. Yeah. And he eats ice cream and watches TV. That's about it. That's all he does.
And you know, it's so crazy. You know, I live across from Forest Hill Stadium where they have like mid concerts all summer. It's kind of been a nuisance, to be honest, but they had a Rock the Bells today. And Rock the Bells, like, it used to be okay. Like, I saw it once. It was Wu-Tang and Rage Against the Machine, which was pretty lit, actually, like 10 years ago. This year, it's all people that like haven't, like, the most recently successful artist was Ludacris. And then before that, Redman, who hasn't put out a good album since like 94. Or like, I guess the Method Man Blackout record is pretty good. And then a bunch of oldies, Salt and Pepper, LL, etc. But what makes me think of this is like, you're talking about your stepdad with this great physique. But I saw like huge motherfucking black people today, fat as shit. And if they have genetics that rock solid, what is going into their fucking bodies to blow it out to that? It's just like straight up Mountain Dew Code Red. Like more Mountain Dew than I drink water or something.
It's probably a different
bro.
tribe.
Anyways,
Yeah, I've been a different tribe. I've been door dashing a bit lately to fill in some financial gaps and shit. And
yeah, I respect that.
yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, every time I bring that up, people are like, "Oh man, are you like?
Are you
like they'd
okay?
rather me yeah, it's like they'd rather me sell my ass or something." But
Jack Mason certainly would.
yeah, he'd probably throw
He'd
some
prefer it.
down. I but no, it's a lot of that actually. Like straight up, no fuckload of Mountain Dew, just a
Yeah.
fuckload. It's like wow, y'all don't.
Yeah, the whole like the line that I wrote, Negro genetics evade me. I was just because I watch like you know, everybody has their like bullshit entertainment value stuff that they just like watch to pass the time. And my YouTube algorithm is just all bodybuilding and UFC. That's like the only shit that comes up. Occasionally some like old rock concerts or whatever. But it was this one video between four either current or former pros, and then two like industry influencers, one of them being the late Rich Piana, who's known for looking like Goro. He was like a cocaine addict, oxy addict, and just like abused levels of juice that no one in like the actual bodybuilding world would ever do. But so they're like, so half the guys are white, half the guys are black. And what I think is so kind of cool about bodybuilding is that they're so divorced from the discourse. So they're just having like a straight up race science debate amongst like black and white guys in the industry. They're all friends. And one of the white guys, forget who it was, maybe like, I think one of the current guys, Hunter Labrada or something like that. But they were like, you know, black guys, they don't have to lift as heavy as white guys to get that hard conditioned muscle. They can get the same effect from repping out lighter weight. And two of the black guys were like, fuck that. That's bullshit. I can outlift any of you here, motherfucker. I lift heavier than all of you. Which I think is, at least for one of them was Phil Heath, who's like a god. So he was correct. But then the other black guy goes, that's true, man. I never went heavier than, say, hundreds on chest, and I would just do that for like 15 to 20 reps. And then Rich Piana just looks at the camera and he goes, Negro genetics evade me, haha. And I was thinking these guys were going to explode at him, but they all were just laughing. I was like, that's
well, it's
beautiful.
Like, it's whenever you see dudes who do calisthenics, all the bodyweight guys who are black and jacked, like Hannibal for King or, you know, some of these other guys, like they look great, but I'm just not sure that I could do push-ups and muscle ups and, you know, a ton of squats and look like that. I just don't think it would happen.
Yeah, and think of how much time you have to. I mean, honestly, calisthenics were my base. Like when I was 25 or so, and I was just like a pillhead fucking fitness guy. I mean, that was my thing. I used to like take pills, run all day, and then do shitloads of calisthenics. I looked like Bruce Lee, but you waste a lot of fucking time. You definitely get a better workout in shorter amount of time, taking your body to failure, lifting heavy. I always think
deadlift.
Oh fuck yeah, dude! Every week.
Yeah, okay.
Every week.
That's the problem because I have a Planet Fitness subscription. So the best you can do is
they
like
don't allow them.
A Smith machine rack pull is what you can do. But I do miss doing actual deadlifts when I had a real gym. But anyway, sorry, that's just a random question.
Yeah, I mean, I think deadlifts are essential for bodybuilding. Not everybody does, you know, there are ways to hit your lower back otherwise, but just like for proportional strength, all in the middle, I love them. I'll typically only go
like a hinge with some dumbbells or something like that.
I use barbell for like I just do a classic deadlift, reverse grip technically, usually, and I'll do it in like a pyramid structure. So like warm up 135 for 10, 225 for 10, 315 for 10, and then I'll do 405 for like 6 or as many as I can get them, and then go back down. And by the end of that, you are just fucking, you know.
Yeah.
But I always think like the 8 to 10 rep range is optimal for growth specifically.
Y'all seen those hex bars that were designed like specifically for deadlifting?
Yeah, I've seen those on like Instagram and shit. Yeah.
No, are they? What are those? The ones
you stand?
What are they called?
You stand in.
Oh yeah.
You stand.
Yeah, we have one of those at my gym. They're good for They're definitely good for trying out heavier weight before you go to the flat bar. But I still think classic deadlift is the fucking ultimate.
Is that and because it looks sick balance? It's like a balance thing, or why is the?
Because it looks dope. I don't fucking know. I'm like, yeah, it's lit, dude.
That's the best answer, actually. That's the best answer. If you would come at me with some shit like, well, because you know the isometric, blah blah blah, whatever, I would have thought you were bullshitting. But as soon as you said because it looks dope,
dude. When you're deadlifting heavy weight, women's heads are fucking turning, dude, because like your pump is just everywhere. Last week, actually, on fucking when did I do back? I did back on Wednesday. This it's funny because I'm like everyone at my gym is like Latino or Asian because of the area we live in. So I definitely cut a striking figure. I'm just like this goth white guy wearing a cut off sleeve, like death metal t-shirt covered in tattoos. I mean, I must look pretty fucking weird combined with the fact that I'm like easily in the top 3 strongest motherfuckers there. But I told this to my wife. I don't know why, probably because I was trying to let her know that I'm still capable of things if I wanted to do them. It's very sweet. Chubby girl comes up to me and she's like, this is gonna sound weird, but can I ask you a question? And I was like, yeah, sure baby, shoot. And she pulls up Instagram and she shows me a photo of this really cute I think she thought she must have thought I was younger than I am, but like really cute, like 22-year-old blonde girl that I've seen before at the gym, or at least have noticed her. She's like, my friend is wondering if you're single and if I can give you her number. I was like, oh, damn, baby, you know, any other time, but I'm married now. And she's like, oh my God. But I was like, fuck, son, I'm the lord of this fucking place now. So lit.
You waited until you got married to get jacked. That's the issue.
I know. I did like married and pseudo-famous post-marriage. Oh God, I would have been on such a crazy fucking tear in any other scenario. Now, if I like say one flirty thing, I live in fucking Jewish guilt for goddamn.
I must have Jewish guilt too. Yeah. No, I get that, dude. I get that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
But
So
I do love my wife, for all the fans out there, just to, I'm a good man with solid, steady values, and I've never done anything wrong in my life.
I'll co-sign that 100%.
hell yeah, dude. Let's go. Let's go. Let's talk about some Japanoise, some
Yes.
Japanoise. Adam, you gave us a 5-page PDF of homework to do for this episode, and I'm glad that you did.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
a
you
lot
need
of
some
shit.
context for this kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Well-
I wanted to. So today on the show, we're going to be talking about Japanese noise music and psychedelic rock from the late 60s up through, well, I guess the mid 90s is some of it.
Yeah, the psych rock dates back to the late 60s, and then the noise mostly 90s.
Yeah, and I wanted to start with the noise. So I went in the order that you provided these for us. So I started off listening to Merzbau's Venereology, and I knew Merzbau from I want to say he did some records with Mike Patton on Ipecac.
He did.
I definitely heard his stuff before, but I'd never listened to Venereology, and I was kind of blown away, especially by the fact that this guy, Akita is his last name, was attempting to riff on death metal. This was his take on death metal. So he drank a bunch of beer and got his pedals and amplifiers and whatever the fuck else and made this incredible sonic experience. And the reason why I like Venereology so much is that the first half of the album is one track, right? And you wrote something in the PDF that you sent us where you said you kind of break through at a point. And I think I broke through at about... You good?
Yeah, I just dropped some shit. It's all good.
Oh, cool. I broke through it about like 10 or 12 minutes and I started to get it. And I was like, oh, okay. But I wanted to start off the conversation about noise music in particular and Japanese noise music specifically with this idea of art that you have to allow yourself to break through, right? Is that what attracted you to this kind of music initially? How did you get into this shit?
Oh, yeah. I got into it pretty fucking young, actually. Like, I've been knowing about some of the Japanese noise guys since pretty early in high school. And there were multiple routes of access to this kind of thing back then. But first of all, let me just say, I'm really happy to be discussing this topic with you guys on this show. I love what you do with the specificity of the theme, Japanese culture. But you had their avant-garde music, extreme music, is one of their most important cultural exports. So I'm glad to be blowing this load.
Nobody better to talk
people's
to.
Digital assholes. Yeah,
man. There's nobody better to talk to about this stuff than you. So hit us with it.
So I think I got into it. All right. So I first, as a 14 or so, I'm reading a lot of Terrorizer magazine, really getting into, I'd made the leap from Slipknot to Slayer to and then Slayer to Norwegian black metal and death metal. And then I kind of rewinded the metal and I was starting to go backwards from Nirvana to Sonic Youth. And then Sonic Youth, good band, but I would say they're more important in the cultural touchstones that they reference in their interviews and such. And Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth would always talk about Japanese noise music. And I remember I'd look at pictures of these guys and I just thought they looked really fucking cool. And then the first record I got was a Merzbow album. It wasn't Venereology. It was one of his other big ones. But at first, I didn't even really enjoy it sonically, but I liked the thrill of having discovered the like something that to me seemed like the end. Like you know, you can even like National Socialist black metal, which is like extremely hateful and dark and violent and very avant-garde in a way. It's still rock and roll, you know, it's guitar music.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something about the sound of noise that's so impenetrable, so voluminous that you're just like, I have to like this. I'm gonna find a way to enjoy this. And then the fucking time that I really, really, really fell in love with this shit was seeing it in a live setting. The first noise show I saw was an American noise group called Cocky SP. They're from Minneapolis. They have a rotating band of musicians in air quotes, but they're all sort of around their ringleader, the main guy's name, Emil Hagstrom. Saw them in Boston at one point. They showed up late. They plugged in and they played for max like 6 minutes. And in that 6 minutes was like fucking chaos. And truly, like, they started a mosh pit and it was just so, they're not even like the most sonically gifted band. It's just like pure energy in a live setting. And then I became fucking hooked. So I would go to this guy named Emil Bolau, real name Ron Lassard. He owns a record label called Records. It's how it's pronounced. It's like RRR Eckers. But he you know, if you call the store, he's like, Records. This is Ron speaking. And I would go yeah. And I would go there and just buy everything I could get my fucking hands on. You know, there's a special like collecting aspect to noise music because everything is rare. Visually, it's usually quite interesting. And then, you know, I saw a bunch of shows, and then when I moved to New York, Dom Furnow, who's prurient, OG American noise, he's one of my best friends now, but he used to own this store on 9th Street called, it's the same name as his label, Hospital Productions. I was only able to go there a couple times because he was already kind of closing shop when I moved to town, and we didn't become friends till years later. But I went to his store and he had like the most immense collection of noise and black metal shit to buy. So I just like, you know, in my first few weeks in New York, I spent, you know, maybe $2,000 on heroin and then like $1,000 on records. And I'd be like, Dad, I ran out of money. And then living in New York, of course, there's a lot more shows. Like the best noise show I've ever seen, actually, I've seen Merzbow twice. Once was at Hospital Fest, like a year before the pandemic, Dom's show. And that one was actually a little quieter than I've come to know his work. The first time I saw him, however, was at this club that closed a couple years ago. Great place where I did a whole lot of drugs, called Output, which was in Williamsburg near the water. Sometimes they would have techno guys come in, and then occasionally they would have noise people. I saw Merzbow there, and my ears were ringing for weeks. It was like the densest, the two loudest things I've ever heard in my life was that and My Bloody Valentine I saw at one point in the Masonic Temple. But like the thing with noise, the best way to really experience it is to just let the volume physically totalize you. You're not trying to hum to a fucking tune. You're not trying to even bang your head. Sometimes bands can kick it up with speed, maybe a slight beat, and you can get a mosh pit going. But something like Merzbow is purely about getting high as a kite, closing your eyes, and just like letting the volume crush you, because you can physically feel this volume. The feedback creates an actual weight.
Yeah, I've been
yeah.
getting ever since the hospital shit. I've been getting real heavy into like shamanistic healing and like occult magic ritual stuff to kind of just build myself back up better in every way, not just like physical health wise. And so like been playing a lot of like Choku Rei music and set on intention meditation shit. And noise feels a lot like that Choku Rei, where it's just like after 10 minutes of just you're like outer space, you're somewhere else. And noise is like that same, like just splits the fucking fabric of reality, and now you're down some different chaotic hole.
Certainly. And there's like some noise musicians that have even kind of played around with that meditative aspect of it. Alb comes to mind, this Finnish guy, Jocko Van Halle comes to mind. And you know, it is at the point now, I think, like noise is becoming a bit of a poser genre. Like how many fucking artists do I need sent to my Bandcamp every week that's like anal AIDS, new 7-inch by Anal AIDS called I Have AIDS and It Sucks or whatever. And then it's just like shitty power electronics with a kid like screaming the lyrics of like some serial killer profile. So like, you know, a lot of these kids are just hung up on like the content, like they're like hot topicifying noise music. When what this music really is supposed to be is like genreless. It's supposed to be completely open to projecting all sorts of various content and themes onto it, using just like the destruction, like the actual erosion of the psychological faculties of the volume.
When I listen to Merzbau's Venereology, or like CCCC was another one that
they're amazing.
I liked all of them, but there is a kind of thick quality to the good stuff. So I wanted to ask you, as a noise guy, what distinguishes good noise from bad noise? Because somebody who, like, I turned it on for my wife. I was like, here's what I'm listening to. And she's like, what is that? And I think a lot of people would, whether it was Merzbow or you know, one of these bands that you're talking about, it would be indistinguishable. So for you, as a noise guy, what's separating the two?
Well, I mean, first of all, your wife's reaction is perfectly valid, you know?
Yeah, right.
I think a lot of people respond to it like that. And I wouldn't like ever, it's really not meant for everybody, you know? Even me, it's not like I listen to this shit all fucking day. Like, you know, half the time I'm just listening to Metallica, Guns N' Roses.
I'm gonna stop you right there, because actually there's an interview with Merzbow that's really interesting, where the interviewer asks him, how do you see yourself putting your music in front of a wider audience? And he just straight up goes, it's not for a wide audience. He says it is impossible. It is impossible to do so.
Yeah, and what's so fascinating about Merzbow, though, is he has kind of generated a wide audience compared to everybody else. Anyways, he makes money. You know, his shows sell out. Right. But I think when you're the king of something, you can always work that. But as far as like so when I know something is good, it's not necessarily right away from the sound of it. All that helps. Like you can tell when people are taking things like production seriously. You can tell when there's a bit more skill going on. But I think what makes some like let's just go with the Japanese stuff. What makes this stuff ground zero and gives it such sort of grandiosity is that these guys, they weren't like making noise. Noise to them was like, these guys were like conceptual artists interested in things like free jazz, psychedelic rock, avant-garde compositions, and all these. They're not thinking about noise as like a separate thing, but like a thing that's a part of all good music. All music has an element that's noise, so they're trying to isolate. You know, Merzbow's like, how do I take just that ringing fucking feedback sound that I hear in a Hendrix guitar solo and make that the thing? you know, you can't be thinking of it. These guys, the good guys aren't thinking of it as noise music. They're just thinking it's noise. It is what it fucking is. I think what makes a lot of the shit today such trash is most of these kids are just like dorky fucking edgelords looking for new t-shirts to try on. It's like, they're like, oh, I like black metal and I like noise. I'm so extreme. But noise is like, it shouldn't feel weird that you like something like Public Image Limited or like post-punk, and then also like noise. Like there's a lineage between all this stuff. And also there's this great essay that I have referenced a lot in the past, because I used to write before my my most substantial cancellation. I was writing a column for the Quietus, which is a experimental music website run by faggots and cowards in the UK. I was writing about contemporary art and noise music for them. And I had a column on noise music called Genre is Obsolete. This was a reference to an essay by a philosopher named Ray Brassier. Brassier used to be pretty lit. He wrote specifically about nihilism and weird art. And now he's just like a fucking annoying communist who just like writes thousands of words about class struggle or whatever. It's like, shut the fuck up. But Genre is Obsolete. He's making a case for what noise actually is. It's like, he uses two artists, two bands that I love very much. First of which is To Live and Shave in LA, which was a performance collective and like insane noise band, spearheaded by this guy named Tom Smith, who, despite being a Gen X liberal, was like a truly delightful guy and a really fucking brilliant poet and artist. And I was lucky enough to interview him a couple years ago. He recently died of cancer. And then this band called Runzelstern and Gurgelstock, crazy band name, I know, but they're these crazy Swiss motherfuckers. And he's using these bands to argue like, okay, they don't seem that similar, but they're both noise. So what is noise? Noise is everything that's not fucking music. It is not, you can't classify it as a genre, because we classify music by genres. What is the element of notation happening that creates a certain structure? Is it pop? Is it rock and roll? Is it jazz? These are all different ways we compose notes. Noise has no fucking notes. Even if you do, it's just because you feel like doing it for the fuck of it. It's the part of the music that eludes notes. It's just fucking noise. That's what needs to be focused on. You're playing with sound. Like an abstract painter makes fucked visions of paint. A noise musician is making abstract art with volume and sound.
Yeah, that's what finally like clicked with me too, just from a like, what is this as a medium? It's like forcing an experience on you, the same way as it's forcing your own projection into something, the same way like abstract art does, where it's like some people approach it and go, what the fuck am I looking at? Am I supposed to squint? And some people are just like, I like the colors. And then others are like, I really feel something from this. It's like, no, it just is what it is. There's just something out there taking away everything else, so that you have to give your own, not necessarily meaning to it, because it can be absent of any kind of, it is absent of any kind of meaning or whatever. It just is what it is, which is noise. That's it.
Yeah. And like, whatever meaning there is, or whatever meaning you're projecting, is typically guided by like the visual art and the packaging more than it's actually guided by the sound. You know, like if you're looking at a Merzbow album, you probably don't know what to think, to be honest. He kind of he's pretty broad in his aesthetic, actually. But you know, you look at something like what's a good example? Let's think of the Finnish guys. Mikko Aspa, who he's a black metal guy who also does he's like an OG noise guy for his project Grunt. it's just really fucking harsh noise, but his packaging is all like children being murdered, whatever. So, you know, that's what you end up thinking about while you're looking at it or while you're listening to it. You know, it's an itch. I actually have always kind of enjoyed that aspect to it. It's very Dada in a way where like the actual art itself is pretty abstract and eludes meaning, but then they can use to sort visual practice with the packaging and the liner notes and shit as a way to sort of create the aesthetic or to like project a meaning or content onto the aesthetic.
Merzbow even had like a Dadaist quote, I think, right? That you included in
Well, his
this,
name is a direct reference.
right. Found out why I decided to destroy all conventional music. I thought nobody composed real surrealist music except Pierre Boulez and Frank Zappa, but for me they are too musical. I wanted to compose real surrealistic music in a non-musical way. Surrealism is also reaching unconsciousness. Noise is the primitive and collective consciousness of music.
Yeah. Yeah. And his name, Merzbow, his project's name is a reference to a project by the Dadaist Kurt Schwitters, best known for being one of the pioneers of collage. But there's an unfinished artwork called Merzbow, Merzbau, which he basically just remodeled a house with a bunch of found material, turned it into like a living collage. It's super sick, but it was never finished. And Merzbow was like, all right, yeah, that's what the project is. And but you see right there, this is like this isn't just like some chud like fucking plugging in and be like, oh wow, it's fucking loud. Wow. This is a guy who thinks a lot about his work. And
yeah, he has intention.
Yeah.
There's intention.
He's got intention.
He does.
Yeah, Masami's a smart motherfucker. You know, it's actually two buddies of mine, Mike Connolly and Gray Holger, both noise musicians, but they also do a podcast called Noise Extra. It was originally just a Merzbow worship project. It was called like Merzcast. And they did like 5 episodes. They were just going through his massive discography because the guy's got like 1,000 releases. But Merzbow can't speak English that well, so he thought that they were making fun of him somehow, and he had like an actual chimp out on Twitter about it and made them change the name of the project. So, you know, he's protective of his work too.
That's wild. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, you know, they've probably played shows with him and shit and you'll know him, but I don't think like he probably just thinks he's so above like everyone, you know, he's the king. So
yeah, he's like a super vegan too.
Playing.
I read an interview with him and he made a total detour halfway through the interview, and he was just like, I feel like if you eat dead animal flesh, that's the same as racism. And I was like, all right, cool. Yeah. I fuck with it. I like when people are crazy like that. I like people who have passionate ideas about shit, you know? Like I don't have to personally agree with it. I think that I like that he's an insane vegan who drank a shitload of beer and made this crazy record. I think that's fucking cool.
Yeah, and liking animals a lot is way cooler to me and more understandable to me than like worshiping people of different races, you know. Right. I don't like animal cruelty. You know, I don't think it's that cool. You know, he has made shitty records. Like the guy just, especially now, because he's just like, you know, he'll fart an album out and be like, and you know, he's made like 400 of them.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well,
like
he's got one box set that's alone 400 releases, you know. Mm-hmm. So he's in the thousands, but the shit that fucking hits is you know, okay, so the main criticism he gets is for a brief period Masami was using all computers as opposed to analog equipment. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't really like that stuff. They're like, this isn't as visceral. I kind of disagree. I think a lot of what he did with like Laptop Noise was absolutely insane and innovative. But most people like the shit he did from the late 80s to the early 90s. And the reason I chose Venereology is because it's both a landmark record, but also because it was released by Relapse, best known for putting out lots of death metal and grindcore. And you know, this was the record that basically introduced him to a much larger audience outside the avant-garde, because like, you know, the way record labels like that worked back then is they were mail order. So you had some of these metalheads just like basically being fucking sent every record that came out. So they're getting Brutal Truth, you know, they're getting fucking Nassim, all these like sick grindcore bands. And they're all extreme, but you know, it's still rock out fucking music. And then they're sent this disc by Merzbow with this like strange alien cover called Venereology. They plug it in and it's just like it must have fucked people up.
That deep bass rumble too. That's what put me into a meditative state, I think, was that underlying
Absolutely
rumble. I had sprinkled a lot of diatomaceous earth around my house to like catch earwigs and shit. And I was mopping it up and it creates this kind of paste. And as I was mopping it up, I was putting the mop into the bucket. And then as I was going to wring it out, the head of the mop was falling back into the bucket. And so I had my hands in this gross brown liquid, and it was just in my earphones. It was just like that rumble. And I was like, dude, this is perfect, because I feel like this album allowed me to feel a kind of unadulterated, pure hate while I was listening to it towards nothing at all. But it felt really good to just feel just angry,
like a nihilism.
Yeah. But like completely unattached to language, because even as soon as you say nihilism, there's associations, or hate that has associations too. But I didn't realize until after I was done doing my chores and the album was over that what I was feeling was just pure anger and hatred that didn't manifest in physical violence or actual substantive hate. So I think it's good for that.
Yeah, it's a cathartic sound for sure. Yeah, he also like, I mean, the way he was, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Kelby.
Well, on the tip of like the whole intention thing, like them having different intentions, that the incapacitants, how that album that you said, the one that you sent, set out to just, the Repo album was just like pure harsh noise, just obliterate your fucking ear holes. It still catches some kind of, like, it still catches some kind of wave of rhythm where
catches a wave.
It's just crazy, that like relationship between intention of the artist and then the product that they come up with.
I fell asleep listening to the Incapacitants one, like, and I had super fucked up dreams. I had such fucked up dreams. It was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we could do Merzbow for days, but Incapacitants is another landmark group from Osaka. And Osaka, I would say, is the city it's like the main city for this stuff. And I'll be going there in April of next year, but I'll tell the rest of that. Yeah, I'll tell the rest of that pretty soon when we go down the list a little bit. But Incapacitants are generally considered like the ground zero for what we now think of as harsh noise, where it's really just supposed to be like, you know, like Merzbow, this other guy that I love, Gary, whatever the fuck it is. They're still using things like tape loops, collaging, samples. Incapacitants was like, no, we're doing fucking noise. The only really like the interesting conceptual conceit of Incapacitants is Toshiji Mikawa is a finance bro. And sometimes there's like obscure references to global markets and whatnot in his liner notes, which is always funny. And he would wear suits live, which I always like. I actually they came to America maybe like 10 years ago. No, longer than that. No Fun 08. I wanted to go so fucking bad. They're headlining. And that was like my peak noise. I was like, this is the most lit shit ever phase, but I was not able to attend because I was in Arizona. And yeah, but I chose this album Repo specifically, one, because it was recently reissued by this what's the name of that fucking company? Oh, Hiroshima. So Hiroshima, quite a controversial thing in the noise world, because they what he does is he reissues some of the masterpieces, but then he puts them in these really elegant packaging and charges a shitload of fucking money. So even though I'm not always down with the prices, I think what he does is very valid, because I think this stuff does deserve historicizing. And really hard to fucking get. It's like, okay, I can get like a $45 reissue that's like elegantly, beautifully packaged, or I can get like a $500 tape from some fucker on the internet with like scratches all over it. So I think what he does is perfectly valid. And I also just think Repo is like one of their coolest records, because like all these guys are they put out so much volume. There's so much shit to sift through that it is like, I would much rather sometimes just stick with these like main fucking albums that I think announces what the project is very well. And 1989, to 1990, this is the period when noise music is still quite isolated to Japan. But as you go to 1990, Alchemy Records is now a thing. And you have this like, and Incapacitants and Hijo Kaiden, who we're about to talk about, are the groups that really started making this global tape trading a thing. And what's so crazy about noise is that it was basically for the first time that it wasn't American culture influencing Japanese culture. It was that Japan had cultivated its really own form of avant-garde expression. Yes, there were things like industrial music in the UK, in power electronics in Europe that were a thing, but harsh noise, very few vocals, no rhythms, no beats. That's Japan. And then because of that, guys in America get a hold of it, and then we have an American noise scene that starts to emerge. So it's really Japanese jizzing over the West and being
Let's
like,
go.
hey, we can do shit too. Yeah.
Let's fucking go. No, I listening to the Incapacitants record, by the way, there a lot of it. I'm a big Mars Volta fan. And there are portions of the Incapacitants record, Repo, that seem to me to have been lifted wholesale and placed into Francis the Mute, which I think is their best album. But I could hear like the childlike voices and the slamming doors and all of that under this kind of sonic wave of kind of woozy sound. When I was listening to that, I was like, oh shit, this sounds like Francis the Mute. So it had to have been an influence, I think, probably. I'm curious about the Japanese element of this. So this arose out of Japan. Do you know why?
All I know is that these guys were hanging out at record stores. There's a couple stores in Osaka and Tokyo that were really good for imports. And these guys were into things like psychedelic rock, free jazz, krautrock from Germany. And of course, industrial music was already happening. So like noisy, mostly electronic sound was already a thing. Like you had Throbbing Gristle, you know, you had Non, Boyd Rice in America, White House, of course, inventing power electronics, my publisher, Philip Best, an important figure in all of this. But yeah, what Japan did, where they were just like isolating specifically the feedback. I don't know whether it's a pure authentic thing. There's a book that's written about it. It's just called Japanoise, written by this guy named David Novak. Good book. But even that is mostly focusing on like the feedback loop between the West and Japan at this time, like the trading. I really think part of it is just like they heard, and you know, the ground had been laid in industrial music, and they're like, how do we, you know, Merzbau's thing is like, how do I make this even more surreal? How do I isolate the feedback more? That's what it's all about. It's like the feedback is all it is, you know. We all love Jimi Hendrix, right? Jimi Hendrix, at the time he was playing, no one had heard anything that fucking loud before, ever. People report leaving those shows feeling like their ears had been blown out. He was also one of the first guys to really use feedback. Fast forward 20 years, and the feedback that makes those Hendrix songs still have such balls to them is now isolated as its own form of expression, and it comes from Japón.
Well, and I think too, I think also the not to, I don't know, I feel like going back to the bomb is the easy way to do it, but I can't help but think that when I listen to Merzbow and I hear that deep rumble and that insane noise, it does have a bomb-like quality to it, right? A total destruction. Like, what better country to have a form of music that is trying to represent a totalizing destruction than a place that not, 40 years earlier got totally destroyed.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what else is I think interesting to think about, like the band we're going to talk about when we get to Psych, Les Réalises des Nudes. These guys were like Japanese anti-imperialists that were bemoaning the fact that, their society was absorbing traits from a country that nuked them twice. But they're a rock and roll band, so they're still using the primary mode of American expression. So it's almost like, think about, oh, here's noise. We're going to remove any aspect of Westernness and just take the noise at the end of a rock and roll song. We'll steal that and then we'll send it back and it's like we'll blow their heads up the way they blew our women and children up. Or whatever.
No, I think it's valid. I think that's a super valid way of looking at it, because when you think about it from that lens, I mean, Akita himself he's 60 now, right? So he would have been the generation just after the generation that experienced that. So I think that if you think about the bomb being dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki while you listen to Venereology, a lot of shit kind of starts to make sense in a story sense, not necessarily in a sonic or aesthetic sense, but in a metaphorical story way. The next album that we have here,
this was my favorite of the list.
Oh, cool.
Dude,
I love
this album.
Kaidan.
Yeah, this album is so hard. Hijo Kaidan's tapes. Yeah, I'll let y'all talk about that one. This one's fucking dope though. They're all dope.
Yeah, Kelby, what made you so hard with this one?
The texture of it whenever like it came up, because I was actually listening to them out of order, just kind of clicking around all throughout the past few days, going back and forth, and I got stuck on Mainliner for a little while, and then
oh god, I love that band.
Just that shit was so good. But then when I hit this, it just had a different like everybody says crunchy, but it like applies. It like has this crunch like grain to it that was different than just not just a noise. It's like sonically the way it came into my ears, it's like it was on a lower frequency than the rest of them. It's like it went under my jaw whenever, like as soon as I pressed play, I was, what the fuck? Like it was there was physicality to it that made me like
incredible physicality. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to snap back and pay attention. I was like, okay, shit.
Yeah, I mean, I of all my favorite noise stuff, Hijo Kaiden is one that I actually kind of regularly listen to. Like I always keep the files downloaded on the computer so I can bring them back up. You know, most shit I send into the cloud, but they're important in more ways just than the sound. I would say their primary importance is when they're founded in 1979, so they go back, you know, but they're founded by this guy named Jojo Hiroshige. He's the one constant member, and it was originally a side project of, I don't even know, it's really hard to find anything recorded of them, but he's in this band called Rise and Kaidan, which I guess could have some sort of analog in the no wave bands at the time in New York, like Teenage Jesus, like really noisy punk bands. And then Hijo Kaiden was like a side project, and he was like, I just want to do the noise now. But they become a more set unit once Junko, who's an iconic like noise screamer, she joins the group. And I think first of all, they started Alchemy Records, incredibly important fucking label. Created all sorts of distribution deals with Western stores to get noise in people's hands. Not just noise too. They also put out a lot of Japanese punk bands and some jazz stuff too. But I think what that physicality that you're talking about is, Jojo is like, the music he listens to is free jazz. So, you know, he's into things like Albert Eiler, Ornette Coleman, the more fucked up Coltrane shit, all that music. Jazz is like pure physicality because it requires so much athleticism to play it.
Mm-hmm.
And a Hijo Kaiden show, these aren't motherfuckers like plugging into amps and just like squiggling at tables, which is like a lot of the time what it is. These guys are creating walls of sound and then balls to the walls, freaking out like they're Adam Lehrer in a Botched Chadification video or some shit, you know.
And also,
yeah,
some of these tracks too. I mean, Circles has this insane. They're obviously using guitars to mess with, like, it's some fretwork type stuff, but when you get to Salem's Lot, I was like, damn, this is a spooky track. It's at Salem's Lot, I thought was kind of creepy.
Yeah, and I also loved how they always did cover songs, but it would be like, you know, they cover Faust, the German krautrock band, on there, and they cover fucking Hawkwind. We're at a psych rock band who I absolutely goddamn adore. Of course, Lemmy, famously of Motorhead, was actually in Hawkwind as a young man. So, you know, they seem to be actively like giving this new music a historicity. And like, you know, because there had always been fucked up music. Like if you listen to the Velvet Underground in the late 60s, you were like a pretty weird hip motherfucker. You know, that was considered like extreme music. Ditto with free jazz or whatever. But this music is sort of blowing everything out. You know, it makes everything else sound pretty fucking tame because there's nothing to like grasp onto. It's just like annihilating of the senses. But Hijo Kaiden, even with that aspect of the annihilation of the senses, it does have this almost like grooviness to it, or like a lightness of spirit or something that I've always gravitated towards.
Yeah, there's a bit more instrumentation on display than just the the loops and the like you can feel like the texture is also coming from it. It seems like there's actual instruments going into the noise, like not just looping a certain sound, but creating use and I'm just basing this off of what it sounds like. I don't know their actual process, but it's like they're
No,
using
JoJo does play guitar sometimes. Yeah.
okay, yeah, so they're using instruments not necessarily to not to create rhythms or to follow note patterns, but to create this noise instead of just taking, samples off of pre-existing uh orchestrations and then just like stripping it of its melody and all that shit.
Yeah, or like short circuiting amps and all the shit they usually do. Yeah, and there are pure noise bands, not noise rock. Noise rock is rock and roll that just sounds a little noisy, but like noise bands that use guitar. I was actually going to include one of my favorite artists, but I tried to keep it to like who I think are the five like most important historically or whatever. But there's this guy Soulmania, similar era as the rest of these guys. I think he started playing in the mid 80s. He's pure guitar noise. He shows up on stage with a 12-string guitar, double axe. He builds these instruments himself, which is really cool. And there's this awesome video that's been on YouTube forever where it's him in his apartment with his like amp stacked up to the ceiling. And it just shows him plugging his guitar into like several different amps. There's three output sources on the guitar, plugs in, and then he hits the first chord. It's like, boom. And you see his cat fly across the room behind him. Like, it's super sick. So yeah, there's like, most of these guys use electronics and pedals and circuits and all that shit. But there are people that will bring in guitars, horns, and other things that reference like the history of experimental music. And I would say Hijo Kaiden was pretty influential in that regard.
Organs even, right?
Yeah, organs too, which is super sick.
Which brings us to a super banger, Masana. Masana's Inner Mind Mystique. This album fucking slaps. This was
so
really
good.
cool shit. Yeah, this shit was super dope. So I would probably say of the ones you recommended in the noise category, Meersbaugh's first for me, and maybe just because it was actually first. But Masana really took me off guard with just how dense and textured the whole thing feels. So yeah, what did y'all think about I know what Adam thinks about it, but Kelby?
Oh yeah, it fucking rapes your head as soon as you hit play. It's just wow, and then it goes into so many. It's not even a roller coaster. Isn't correct. Like you said, it's dense, so it's like this expanding and contraction of fucking obliteration of noise throughout. I'd say like Masana got me to thinking what this shit actually sounds like. Like, what would I say this sounds like a hurricane made out of nails, or like a wind tunnel full of like some alien frequency cranked up on like coming through the static between channels.
That's a great way of putting it, dude. Yeah, a wind tunnel full of alien frequencies. I feel that. Yeah, the wind tunnel aspect,
like
especially.
To me, it's like a rape fantasy where like you think getting like how women all have like a subconscious rape fantasy where they like think getting raped might be cool.
Sure.
I like to think that they do, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Masana is actually my top dude for a few different reasons. I'm a performance artist. I enjoy the art of the spectacle and putting on a show. I appreciate showmanship. My favorite fighters, Conor McGregor, favorite bodybuilders, Ronnie Coleman. I think, not that they have to, but I think performers who put some effort into creating a sort of mythos around themselves is cool. And Masana very much is always, he has like the long 70s rocker hair. He's always wearing these skin tight leather jackets and these big bell bottoms. And he'll show up to a gig with 10 people at the show watching and act like he's fucking David Lee Roth about to play, an 82, about to play for like 100,000 or whatever. So I just really fucking love, and even like the visuals, because he actually came to noise a little bit later than the other guys. He was like an acid rock fan and psychedelic rock fan. And it wasn't until he heard a record, I think he reports that the first noise record he heard, he really hated. And then over time, he just kind of kept coming back to it. And then he had this idea, but his visuals are always very like psychedelia, like dark psychedelia, bad trip kind of vibes. And I think that's his music too. It's like, that when you take acid and the moment when it's kind of going bad, you find yourself in like a thought spiral and you're like, I fucking hate myself and I'm like a horrible person. That's the journey Masana's trying to take you on. It's not like flower power, but it is psychedelic. It's like the dark recesses of the mind that can be unlocked through a psychedelic drug experience. And he's also like, he reports that he's really into Jodorowsky, who you could argue is maybe not playing purely with Bad Trip, but about, his films are sort of about all the dark contours of the mind that can be unlocked through the drug experience. I am actually, so next year, Dominic Furnow, he's doing his Hospital Productions Festival in Osaka. And, he asked me to go. I might do like a little documentation of it, like a journal for safety propaganda or whatever, but Michelle and I are going and we're going to make a trip out of it. So we're going to go to Osaka and then Kyoto and then Tokyo. Finally, I'll get to Japan, but the lineup is fucking insane. It's like, it's a collaboration with the metal label Nuclear War Now Productions. So like the Metal Night's going to have Beharit, the black metal band, doing their first show since 94. The Noise Night, headlined by Masana and fucking self.
No shit.
So, given that I'm a VIP, I will very much be best friends with Masana like a year from now. Because come on, if there's anyone that can match his rock star energy, it's this fucking
it's Adam fucking Lehrer, right?
Exactly. But yeah, and I he has a couple records that are really, really great. I think Inner Mind Mystique is the one that best captures this aesthetic that I'm sort of referring to. Inner Mind Mystique. It's like all the parts of your mind that remained occulted or hidden. He's like suggesting maybe you take one hit of acid too much, put the headphones on, sit in a dark space around people you don't know that well, and let it rip. It's like just let the bad trip just wash over you. And I love the album cover too, because it sort of has that it's sort of like he's not that subtle, in his imagery, and it's literally just like it has this sort of like MC Escher like opening up a hallway kind of vibe, and it's just this girl like walking into this like illuminated portal, and it's all ominous and dark. So yeah, I think what's cool about Masana too is like he kind of comes off a little bit more chuddy than the rest of them, like less conceptually rigorous, but it's very clear that he's like very aware of what he's doing. Unfortunately, recently he hasn't done much Masana work. He's been like doing this project called Controlled Death, which is supposed to be a death industrial project in the style of European bands. like Marco Corbelli or A-Trax Morgue, which is cool for those miserable emo European guys. But when it's Masana, you want fucking rock star vibes. So luckily, he made a collab record with Dominic last year under the Masana name, and it seems he's finally reverting to the thing that he does best, which is like bad trip noise god.
Well, that's tight, and I'm glad that shit is going down, because
yeah,
Osaka's been like kind of in the agitator zeitgeist for a little while, at least. That was like one of the best parts of Gaunt's when we were going through, was this American infiltration of that storyline when they get to Osaka. So what about Osaka is that more of like a westernized kind of place?
I think it's just like every country has their bohemian city, you know, like or like America, I guess, has several of them. But you know, you got like St. Petersburg, Russia, a little cheaper, a little bit more of an expat, a little bit more of a journeyman kind of town. I think Osaka is probably similar. It's less like dialed in to the technology and the rapid change of Tokyo. Merzbau is from Tokyo, but like a lot of the shit's from Osaka, and I think Osaka just has enough distance from that to have let it be this like art city.
Yeah, it's like it's the retards. It's the Japanese rednecks
Yeah.
that live in Osaka. Yeah. They have a different accent, which I fucking can't tell the difference. It all sounds like Japanese to me, but Japanese people are something. Yeah. Should do the rest of the podcast like that. Just in Japanese. Turn this into a harsh noise podcast.
Noise.
All right. And then that brings us to the last noise record that Adam recommended, which I loved. I know every time we get to a new record, I'm like, oh yeah, this one was my fucking favorite, bro. They're all very worth checking out. I'll say that. And we're going to put those all in the show notes. But this is C. Loud Sounds Dopa. It's a live album. I liked the live aspect of it a lot. We'll get into this more when we talk about the psychedelic shit. Adam, you linked us to YouTube links. So I was reading YouTube comments. And a lot of people, when you get to the psychedelia shit, they say, oh, I wish that I could have just had like a clean recording of this. I want to hear like a studio version of the album. And those people are fucking stupid, because the live aspect and the grainy kind of Tascam quality to the whole thing is what makes it all work. Some of this shit, especially when we get into the psychedelic stuff, I feel like it would have been like Mainliner would have been crazy to see live as the sounds were actually happening. Man. But the way that they were recorded and the way that we listen to them is different, but equally, I think, impactful. And I think that's an interesting way of looking at this. The way that, you know, a lot of these are studio albums, but the CCCC is live, and it has that kind of just, I don't know, everything that's supposed to sound shrill and piercing hurts that much more. Everything that's supposed to sound dissonant sounds that much more dissonant. It's a really great medium for this type of music, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there are noise bands for sure that like are meant to be, you know, they consider themselves studio projects, and there are some that don't even play live. None of the Japanese guys play live. Like, all of this shit is, I mean, my brother had a hard time with noise, even though he's like a huge metalhead. But I took him to No Fun festival '09, which was an amazing fucking lineup. The two headliners were the British noise rock band Skullflower, which is just like one of my favorite fucking bands ever. Just guitars played so loud that you sort of like come and die spontaneously. And then right before that,
like
Dom
heroin.
played with, yeah. Yeah, but your dick's still working. And then before that was Dom and Kevin Drum played a show, which is to this day one of the most ripping fucking noise experiences of my goddamn life. They were absolutely incredible that night. And my brother just fully got it. Like, holy shit. I've never heard anything so fucking loud in my goddamn life. You know, it's weird because it's life affirming in a way, you know, to be throttled by something so intensely loud and physical. I think it even though a lot of the content is quite bleak, but like I think it actually is very joyous to be sort of overwhelmed by sound in this way. In the same way that like
in like I felt that way in 2004. I went to Trees in Dallas to watch Phantomas, one of Mike Patton's projects.
Mike Patton, yeah.
Yeah, and he had the Trevor Dunn Trio and the Locust opening up for him, and the Locust was loud as shit. And
yeah,
it got to a point with the Locust where I wasn't even really hearing music at that point. I was just feeling it. And they're like, you know, their songs are 30 seconds or whatever, so it was 30 seconds.
Like a spazcore band.
Yeah, it was like I don't know, like hit training or something like that. Like you sprint for 30 seconds, you stop, you sprint for 30 more seconds. But yeah, I don't think I've ever heard anything louder than the Locust. That was pretty intense.
Did you ever see the episode of Jerry Springer with the main dude from the Locust on it?
No,
what?
Oh, it's iconic. It's like you know, all these emo bitches, his like hoes in different area codes all showed up to like claim him as you know, they all thought they were his girlfriends, and you know, like I think 4 showed up in total, and none of them, they all thought they were exclusive with this guy. And they're like, fucking get away from my man. He's like, I'm in rock and roll. I do whatever the fuck I want. Like he was like he's this weird looking straggly emo guy.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's hard to imagine all these women falling in love because they would wear these gimp suits on stage.
Yeah.
So they all fell in love with the gimp. And honestly, if you did that, then I mean, what did you expect was gonna happen? Honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, Justin Pearson, that was his name. So he did actually play in a couple bands before the Locust. He was in what fucking bands was he in? He was in Swing Kids, who was a pretty good screamo band in like the halcyon days of San Diego screamo. So I guess that's how he had his face out there. But I don't even think it matters. Like women go so crazy for, it's just like musicians do get pussy, you know. If you can build a small fan base, it's just like, it's like the main perk of it. You don't have to be good looking.
It's kind of crazy though. I mean, it's kind of crazy because I've had the reverse of that, where I've seen a woman on stage where I'll be watching a band that's fronted by a woman, and doesn't even have to be a good looking one, but you know, if there's a chick who's kind of like owning what she's doing and fucking rocking out, I'm kind of like, damn, I wonder what her boobs look like. But I kind of think
like,
that about
damn, Lizzo, play that flute.
Yeah, I have like very retrograde views when it comes to women and rock and roll music. Like if I hear like say a black metal band has a female lead singer, which is the case in like a few bands, I'll just immediately assume they're terrible.
Which is, no, I'm not talking about the quality of the band. I'm talking about the animal magnetism type thing.
Yeah,
I don't
and
know.
they know
I feel
that
it.
too. Like women, that's what like the other band is hoping sells. The fact that they have like a cute. I mean,
Right,
imagine
because they
how much
usually
everybody wanted to
because they
fuck Gwen
suck, right?
Stefani.
I still would, by
Yeah.
the way.
Oh God, she's the best. I mean, Gavin Rosdale, man, he blew that. He fucking had to go fuck the maid or whatever.
She'd have to have the bindi on. If she had the bindi on, dude, it's game over for me.
Yeah.
Speaking of female magnetism, CCCC.
Oh yes. Yes.
With
very much selling this.
Mayuiko Hino from at least one Koji Wakamatsu film, one of his Pinku
Yeah, she's
films.
in a few, but that's the most famous one that she's in. What was it? The Rapist of 13 Girls. Very hard to track some of those films down.
Hard to try and search for it too without going down
getting
a
a
few
knock on your door.
holes, you know?
Yeah.
Getting distracted.
But yeah, I mean, but I think it was obviously like a bit of a gimmick, you know, because in Japan, especially, the guys who'd be drawn to this kind of music in these shows would know these films. So they'd show up, and she was really fucking beautiful. But there was like, and she was a great dancer, you know? So like you have this novelty of this insane fucking sound and this really hot naked Japanese girl who's like doing actual rhythmic dancing to a rhythm that doesn't exist. It was quite a striking image. And they were actually a couple at the time, her and Hiroshi. And their tenure as a band was rather brief, actually, probably due to that fact alone. You know, relationships in bands can sink projects. It almost sank the aforementioned No Doubt because that idiot fucking bass player thought he could do better than Gwen Stefani. Nice job, retard. And it sank Sonic Youth eventually when Thurston stepped out on his marriage. But yeah, so they did make a couple studio albums. They're all mostly pretty good. CCC's novelty is that compared to the other music, they do have that kind of meditative aspect. It's kind of trance-inducing music. It's a bit slower. It's a bit more drawn out, a bit more musical at times. But the reason I chose the live music is you still get those aspects, but you also get the fact that at their fucking best, these motherfuckers could tear the goddamn house down with the volume of their sound. And these records were all recently reissued too. So if people do want to track them down, CCC is pretty well documented at this point, and a lot of this shit can be bought pretty easily.
Yeah, use promo code agitator.
Yeah.
Which moves us into the psychedelic portion of the show. I'm gonna butcher this shit, but Les Reyes des Nudes. How the fuck do you say that shit?
Les Rallies. Okay, it's like Les Rallies de Nudes.
Les Reyes, whatever.
Let's just call them de Nudes.
De Nudes.
Yo, this was a real shift from the noise shit, right? When I got to this kind of line of demarcation with these bands, there's something really interesting going on with this, because this is late 60s, early 70s music. You can hear the influence of American psychedelic rock in it, but it's doing something very different, I think. And it gets more different as we go down the bands. But this one in particular, you see the lineage more with them. But the vocals in particular are crazy.
Yeah.
I've never heard anything like these kind of vocals.
Yeah. It's sort of like sort of like
yeah. It's like I mean, but I feel like that Japanese music has always had that interesting relationship with vocalizing emotion, where I think it has a kind of uncanny valley to Western people. Like a lot of people like anime theme songs and shit, and South Park infamously lampooned it with the "Does it wanna protect my balls," like that kind of shit. Like they I don't know what exactly it is, but it's an emotionality that feels like it's coming from a completely different starting point than we have in the West, that leads to something like this particular record, which I loved. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
But it's very different. It's so weird to hear something different that's 50 years old.
Oh, for sure. I mean, what's cool about Japanese psych rock is it has its kind of, there's a great book written by Julian Cope, who is a British musician. He was originally in the post-punk band Teardrop Explodes, but he eventually got interested in more far out shit. And he's written some fantastic books. One of them is called The Jap Rock Sampler, which I own and where I've learned a lot of this information firsthand from. He actually tells this story as a way to track how psychedelic rock went to Japan. And apparently it goes to this guy, Yuya Uchida, who was playing in London as a guitar player and was in a couple bands and opened for the Beatles at one point and became very close with none other than fucking John Lennon himself. Around 1967, John Lennon says, "Oh man, there's this young Negro boy from America playing named Jimi Hendrix. You have to go see him." They go see Jimmy in the they go see Jimmy in the classic power trio form of the late 60s. His Yuya's mind is fucking blown, of course. And he goes back to Japan all excited. He's like, "We need to play electric guitars, okay? We need to play electric guitar."
Somebody cuts their fucking guts out. They're like, "I can only play the weird thing that looks like a boat."
Exactly. So he starts a band called the Flower Traveling Band, which put out some great records, but I decided to leave off the list because I wanted to go straight to the more alien sounding shit. I would say that alien shit starts with these guys, Les Réalises des Nudes. Fascinating historical background to these fucking guys. They were members of the Japanese Red Army. So, you know,
have you seen United Red Army? Have you seen the movie United Red Army?
Yeah.
Oh, it'll totally, like, I feel like we covered it on the show about a year ago, and that put me off of communism forever, and also kind of explained a lot about what's going on right now in our world. It's like, oh, this all makes sense. They're making a pregnant woman punch herself to death. That is communism.
Yeah.
Cool. Got it.
Yeah. But I mean, I think it's a bit more understandable that these guys would become communists just because all of them are trying to rationalize the fact that, you know, they were basically becoming a client state of a country that nuked them.
Right.
So they're experimenting with different extreme political ideologies that they see as a counterbalance or an objection to Western liberalism or whatever. So
yeah, I'm glad they did. I'm glad they did, you know. Sorry about all the dead pregnant women, but you know, I'm glad they did it, you know. just as an example.
Yeah, I mean, in Japanese, you know, they're a warrior country, so when they do violence, they do it right, you know.
Fuck yeah.
So, you know, they're all members of the Red Army to varying degrees. Early members of the band, and particularly Moriakai Wasabashi, was involved with the infamous hijacking of Flight 351, but proving forever how retarded communists were. They hijacked a plane. Their plan was to hijack this plane and have it bring them to Cuba so they could train with Che and learn how to fight guerrilla warfare. They picked a fucking commercial airliner that didn't have enough jet fuel capacity to even leave the country. So they ended up getting fucking stuck. They ended up getting stuck in South Korea for a while. And then they negotiated and they got asylum in North Korea. So they left the band, obviously. They're still in North Korea as far as we know. And the band's leader and mysterious, enigmatic figure, always black clad in leather in photos, Takashi Mizutani, has never really given any interviews. So we don't really know to what extent he was a member of these political activities. He was dead in like 2020, but no one even fucking knew until like 2022.
Listen to the rest of this lovely conversation, plus gain full access to the archives, bonus episodes, read serialized novels on Yugen Junk Weekly, and gain access to the Agitator Discord over on Agitator Z. That's the $5 a month Agitator Z tier on patreon.com/agitator.